Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're going to deconstruct something that so many of us dream about, language fluency. We're going to slice through all the hype, all the myths, and look at what the science actually says it takes to master another language.
I bet you've asked yourself these questions before, right? This idea that there's some kind of magic window for learning a language that just slams shut when you're a kid. It's everywhere. And that big, scary goal of sounding perfectly native? We're going to poke some holes in that idea. So let's get into it.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with the hardware, your amazing brain. Then we'll get into the software, the actual words and sounds of a language. After that, we'll look at the operating system, the daily habits that make it all run. And to wrap it up, we are going to completely redefine the finish line by tackling that native speaker myth.
All right, first up, your brain. You know, the biggest thing holding most adult learners back isn't their ability at all. It's this belief that they've somehow missed the boat. Well, let's go ahead and blow that myth right out of the water. It all comes down to this one incredible word, neuroplasticity. Put simply, your brain isn't a fixed piece of hardware. It's more like living clay, designed to constantly rewire and reshape itself based on your experiences. Every single time you learn a new word or figure out a new sound, you are physically changing your brain. How cool is that?
So, here's the really crucial takeaway. Yes, a kid's brain is like a super absorbent sponge, for sure, but an adult brain is still incredibly flexible. The way you learn might change a little, but your capacity to learn, oh yeah, that absolutely remains. It is never, ever too late.
Now, what's really fascinating is how that learning mechanism shifts. When you're a kid, your brain creates what are called experience-expectant connections. It's basically pre-wired and just waiting to absorb the basics, like your first language. As an adult, though, we rely on experience-dependent connections. These are formed specifically because you decided to learn something new. It's a much more intentional, targeted process.
And this quote just sums it up perfectly. Every podcast you listen to, every conversation you have, every little grammar rule you figure out is actively modifying your brain's network. You aren't just learning, you are literally sculpting your own brain with every bit of effort you put in.
Okay, so we've established your brain is totally up for the challenge, but what should you actually be feeding it? Because it's not just about memorizing giant, endless lists of words. Nope, there's a much, much smarter way to do this.
Take a look at this number, 72%. Just let that sink in for a second. What on earth could this mean for learning a language? Well, it turns out it's the key to a massive shortcut. That's right. If you just master the most common 1,000 word families in English, you can already understand almost 3/4 of a typical book or article. It's the ultimate 80-20 rule for language. All your initial effort is best spent right there.
And this graph just shows it so perfectly, doesn't it? I mean, look at that first bar. It's huge. That's your first 1,000 words. And then, look at the others. The returns drop off so fast. The lesson here is crystal clear. Start with the words you're going to see and use the most.
But okay, knowing a ton of words is only half the battle. You also have to know the music. And that music has a name, prosody. It's all the stuff that isn't the words themselves, the rhythm, the melody, the stress. It's what makes you sound like a human instead of a robot.
And this is a huge reason why native speakers can sound so incredibly fast to a learner. In a stress-timed language like English, it's all about the beat. We rush through the unimportant syllables to hit that regular rhythm. But in a syllable-timed language like Spanish, it's more even, like a machine gun, ra-da-ta-da-ta-da. Every syllable gets its moment. Getting a feel for this is a total game changer.
And I just love this quote because it absolutely nails it. Prosody is what tells someone if you're asking a question or making a statement, if you're being sarcastic or completely sincere. It's the secret sauce of communication, really.
So, we've got the hardware, your brain, and the software, the words and the music. Now let's talk about the operating system. What are the actual real-world habits that successful learners use every single day to make it all work?
And here is the first big secret from a real learner on Reddit. It's not fancy, but it is the absolute truth. Consistency is king. Every single day. It doesn't have to be for hours, but that daily contact with the language, well, it's just non-negotiable.
This is another golden nugget of advice. This is about integration, not just studying. Don't just block out study time in your calendar. Instead, you weave the language into the fabric of your actual life. Change your phone's language. Google recipes in that language. Make it your world.
So if we boil all this great advice down, it looks a lot like this. First, get tons of input that you can mostly understand. Second, you got to read, starting with easy stuff and working your way up. Third, and this is crucial, you have to actually practice speaking. And finally, you integrate. You make the language a part of your digital and physical space.
Okay, let's get to our last section. And honestly, this might be the most important one. We've talked all about how to learn, but we haven't really talked about the goal. For so many of us, the goal is to speak like a native. But what if I told you that's actually the wrong goal?
First, let's clear up some terms, because they get thrown around a lot. Near native means you're incredibly good, but an expert could probably still find a few tiny differences. Native-like, well, that's the holy grail, right? The idea that you are completely, totally indistinguishable from a native speaker.
And this leads to this really cool concept, ostensible native likeness. This is basically when you can pass as a native speaker in any normal everyday conversation. Any non-native patterns you might have are so deep and so subtle that you'd need a linguistics professor with a microscope to even find them.
But here's the kicker. This quote basically points out that many experts believe that if you run enough complicated tests, true, 100% perfect native likeness in someone who learned as an adult is pretty much non-existent. It's a ghost.
And that right there brings us to the most powerful idea of all. If even the experts are saying that absolute perfection is basically a myth, then why are we chasing it? The goal isn't to be a perfect copy. The real goal is to connect, to express yourself, to communicate effectively. Now that is a target that's not only achievable, but way, way more meaningful.
So we'll leave you with this question. If you just let go of that pressure of being perfect, what does fluency actually mean to you? Is it ordering a coffee with confidence, watching a movie without subtitles, having a deep conversation with a new friend? Defining that for yourself? Well, that's the most important first step